Her voice wrapped around me before I even knew what to do with it. Not loud, not sharp, just low enough to sink in, like she meant for it to stay. She said my name once, and then again, slower, and every time it left her lips it felt like the air itself leaned closer. She was standing by the kitchen counter, her hand resting against the edge as if she needed something steady. The late light from the window caught the faintest shimmer in her hair, streaks of silver threaded through dark waves. I told myself not to stare, but my eyes betrayed me. She didn't look away, not at first. "You keep looking at me like that," she said, a half-smile forming and disappearing just as quickly, "and I'll start to wonder what you're thinking." I tried to answer, but the words tangled. My voice came out too soft, a little uneven. "Maybe I want you to wonder." Her laugh was quieter than I expected, like she didn't want to admit she liked the sound of what I'd said. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, but her hand lingered at her cheek longer than it should have. I noticed how her fingers trembled ever so slightly, like she wasn't as certain as she pretended to be. The space between us didn't feel empty, it felt full. I caught the faint scent of her perfume, subtle and warm, like vanilla left in sunlight. My chest tightened with every shallow breath I tried to disguise. "You shouldn't." She started, then stopped. Her eyes dropped to the counter. "What?" I asked. She shook her head. "Nothing." The silence that followed wasn't really silent. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the faint tick of the clock on the wall, and beneath it all, the restless beat of my own pulse. I leaned a little closer, enough for my arm to brush against hers. Just a touch. Her skin was cool at first, then warming under mine. She didn't move away. I could feel her watching me, even when I pretended to look at the floor. The kind of gaze that makes you forget the world outside the room even exists. I wanted to say something, anything, but instead, I just let the moment stretch until it was almost unbearable. "You're too close," she murmured, but she didn't shift. "Do you want me to move?" My question slipped out, quiet but deliberate. Her lips parted as if to answer, but no sound came. The pause was longer than it should have been, long enough for her hesitation to speak louder than her words. She finally exhaled, barely above a whisper. "I don't know." And that uncertainty, that fragile confession, felt more dangerous than any yes or no could have been. The back of her hand brushed against mine again, this time slower, intentional. She drew in a breath like she'd surprised herself. I watched her swallow, her throat tightening before she looked back at me. My name left her lips once more, softer, drawn out like she wanted to test what it did to me. I leaned in, voice low, steady despite the chaos in my chest. "Say it again." Her smile flickered, not wide, just enough to reveal what she was trying to hide. "Don't stop saying mine," she whispered back. The room seemed to hold its breath. Her eyes locked on mine, her hand now flat against the counter but inching closer, fingers almost brushing mine again. I didn't dare move first. And then, a sharp knock at the door broke through the air like glass shattering. Her head turned, her breath caught. She froze. The moment we weren't supposed to have collapsed between us, and yet the pull didn't fade, it only deepened. The knock at the door faded unanswered. She didn't move for a long time, as if stepping away would mean admitting what just happened between us. When she finally turned, she avoided my eyes, busying herself with nothing, straightening a glass that wasn't crooked, shifting a folded towel that didn't need moving. Her silence pressed harder on me than words ever could. I wanted to break it, but part of me feared what she'd say if I did. "I've made mistakes before," she said finally, almost to herself. "Ones I don't plan to repeat." Her voice was steady, but her hands betrayed her, fingers drumming lightly on the counter, restless. I leaned against the opposite side, studying her. The weight of those words hung between us. "You mean with someone like me?" I asked, careful, unsure if I wanted her answer. Her eyes lifted, steady now, but softer than before. "Someone younger. Someone who doesn't know what it's like to wake up one morning and realize half your life is behind you." I swallowed. There was no judgment in her tone, just weariness. "A confession," She glanced away again, and I caught the faintest crease at the corner of her mouth, the kind that doesn't come from laughing but from holding back too much for too long. I wondered how many nights she sat in this kitchen alone, coffee cooling in her hand, silence stretching too wide. "I don't see you like that," I said. Her laugh was almost bitter. "You don't see me at all." "Not really." I pushed off the counter, closing the space between us before I could second-guess myself. My shoulder brushed hers as I leaned past to take the glass she'd been adjusting. I set it back exactly where it had been, my hand brushing hers in the process. She froze, the smallest intake of breath betraying her. "You think I don't notice," I murmured. "But I do." She turned then, and the closeness left me dizzy. Her breath touched my cheek when she spoke. "And what exactly do you notice?" I should have looked away. I should have let her have the last word. But I didn't. My eyes lingered where they shouldn't, on the curve of her mouth, the hollow of her throat, the faint tremor in her hand resting too long against the counter. "You," I said simply, and the words slipped out heavier than I intended. Her lips parted, but no answer came. Instead, she lifted her hand, almost absent-mindedly, brushing invisible dust from my shoulder. The gesture was small, ordinary even, but her touch lingered. She knew it, and I knew it. Neither of us pulled back. For a moment, everything outside the space between her hand and my shoulder didn't matter, the years between us, the stares we'd draw if anyone knew, the quiet rules that should have kept us apart. Her fingers tightened, just slightly, as if she wanted to let go but couldn't. And I didn't move. The silence stretched again, thick and heavy, but this time it felt like something binding us together instead of pushing us apart. Her hand fell away slowly, leaving warmth where it had been. Her eyes held mine, steady, unblinking. Neither of us said it, but both of us knew we'd already crossed the line. The air between us hadn't settled when her phone buzzed on the counter. The sound cracked through the silence like a warning shot. She snatched it up quickly, almost too quickly, holding the screen close to her chest. "Just a message," she said, not meeting my eyes. Her voice was tight-clipped. But she didn't answer it. I watched her thumb hover over the phone, watched the small tremor in her hand before she set it face down. The sound of her breath filled the room, shallow, uneven. "You should," she started, then stopped. Her gaze flicked toward the doorway, as if expecting someone to walk in. I stepped closer before I thought better of it, drawn in like gravity itself was pulling me. The faint brush of her arm against mine made my pulse stumble. She turned, and suddenly our faces were too close, close enough for me to see the faint freckles dusted across her skin, the way her lips parted slightly as though she'd forgotten to breathe. "This can't," she whispered. The words said no, but her body stayed where it was. "I know," I whispered back, though every nerve in me screamed otherwise. We stood in that fragile space, balanced on the edge of something neither of us could name out loud. Her hand lifted, hesitant, trembling, until her fingers brushed my chest. Not a caress, not quite. More like she was testing if I was real, if this pull between us wasn't just in her head. My heart hammered beneath her touch. Her eyes locked on mine, and for a heartbeat I thought she might close the distance. I leaned just slightly forward, breath catching. Then, "Hey, you in here?" A voice called from the hallway, casual, too close. She flinched, pulling her hand back so quickly it stung. Her face shifted into something careful, composed. I stepped back a fraction, though the air still carried the heat of what almost happened. "Yeah," she answered, her tone sharper than before. "Just give me a minute." The footsteps faded. Silence returned, heavier now, thick with everything we hadn't done. She exhaled shakily, pressing a hand to her temple. "This is reckless," she said, softer this time. "Then why can't we stop?" I asked. Her laugh was faint, humorless. "Because wanting something and having it are not the same." I should have backed off, given her space, but instead I stepped close again, close enough to feel her warmth seep into me. Her eyes darted to the door, then back to mine, as if torn between the world outside and the dangerous quiet here. "We'll regret this," she whispered, but she didn't move away. Maybe, I murmured. But not yet. Her hand lifted again, barely, hesitantly, and hovered near mine without touching. The almost touch hurt worse than distance. I tilted my head, just enough to meet her eyes straight on. Her breath brushed against my cheek, warm, trembling. For a moment, everything else disappeared, the message, the voice in the hall, the years between us. We didn't kiss. Not yet. But the weight of what almost happened bound us tighter than any kiss could. When she finally looked away, her hand still lingered close enough to feel, too far to hold. And somehow, that pull was stronger than ever. The quiet between us was no longer harmless. It pressed in, sharp and relentless, every second weighted with the truth neither of us dared to voice. She moved first this time, turning away, gripping the counter as though it could anchor her. Her shoulders trembled just slightly, not enough for her to notice, but enough for me to see. I can't, she began, her voice thin. Then she stopped, shaking her head. This shouldn't even be happening. Something in me cracked. Then tell me to leave, I said. She looked over her shoulder, eyes narrowing like I'd called her bluff. She didn't answer. I took a step closer. My chest brushed against her back as I leaned in, close enough to smell the faint trace of her perfume again, warm, intoxicating, impossible to ignore. You won't, I whispered. Her breath hitched, sharp and unsteady. She turned slowly, and suddenly we were face to face. Her gaze flicked to my mouth before she caught herself, before she snapped it back to my eyes as if daring me to notice. This is insane, she said, though her hand lifted almost unconsciously to my chest, pressing flat against me. My heart thudded under her palm, giving me away. You think I don't know that? My voice was low, raw. You think I don't wake up thinking about you, even when I tell myself not to? Her lips parted, no words coming. Her hand stayed on my chest, trembling but firm. I'm too old for this, she whispered. Too old for what? I asked. For someone to look at you the way you deserve? Her eyes burned, wet at the corners, though no tears fell. She shook her head, muttering, You don't understand. Then make me, I said, leaning closer. She exhaled, shaky, her forehead almost brushing mine. People will talk. They'll judge. They'll think I'm. She cut herself off, biting her lip. I reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her face. My fingertips grazed her cheek, softer than I meant to. I don't care what they think. Her eyes closed at my touch, just for a second. When they opened, her guard had cracked. You'll regret this, she whispered. Not with you, I breathed back. She drew in a deep breath, then, suddenly, leaned forward, pressing her forehead to my chest. The weight of her against me sent every thought scattering. I wrapped an arm around her instinctively, pulling her closer. Her body fit against mine like it had been waiting for this. For a long moment, she just stayed there, silent, leaning into me, breathing against me. Each rise and fall of her chest made it harder to think, harder to resist. Finally, she tilted her head back, her face inches from mine. Her lips parted, eyes locked on me, all hesitation stripped away. Say my name, she whispered, voice breaking. I lowered my mouth, barely brushing hers with my breath. Only if you keep moaning it. And then, the sound of the front door unlocking split the moment in two. We froze, still wrapped around each other, our lips hovering on the edge of no return. The sound of the front door unlocking froze us both. She tore herself from my arms, her breath sharp, her movements frantic. I stepped back, pulse racing, the loss of her weight against me hitting harder than I expected. We waited, listening. But no one entered. Just silence. The door had opened, then clicked shut again. She pressed a hand to her chest, steadying her breathing. Her other hand gripped the counter so tightly her knuckles whitened. That was... she started, but her voice faltered. I swallowed, stepping closer again, not touching her but close enough to feel the heat radiating off her skin. No one came in. Her eyes snapped to mine, wide, unsettled. Then who? She trailed off, glancing at the door as if afraid of what we couldn't see. Her phone buzzed again. She hesitated, then turned it over. One unread message lit the screen. "I heard you." Her face strained of color. She fumbled, locking the phone, pressing it flat against the counter like she could erase what we'd both seen. "Who?" I asked, my voice lower than I meant, the edge of something darker beneath it. She shook her head, refusing to answer. "It doesn't matter." "It does." I leaned in, searching her face. "If someone knows, they can't know." Her voice broke, trembling at the edges. She turned away, running a hand through her hair, tugging at the roots like she was holding herself together. I reached out before I could stop myself, catching her wrist lightly. She froze, her breath sharp, eyes closing as if my touch burned. "Tell me," I said, softer now, my thumb brushing her pulse. She opened her eyes slowly, meeting mine with a mix of fear and something I couldn't name. "It's complicated." Her voice wavered, but her body betrayed her. She didn't pull away. She stepped closer, almost unconsciously, until the space between us disappeared again. "Then let it be complicated," I whispered. Her lips parted, but no words came. She looked down at my hand on her wrist, then back at me. For a moment, the fear in her gaze shifted, softening, melting into something else entirely. "I can't stop thinking about you," she confessed, the words trembling out like she hated herself for saying them. The confession hung in the air, electric, irreversible. Her hand turned in mine, fingers threading against my palm. The smallest gesture, but it shook me more than anything else she'd said. "You're not supposed to," I breathed, though I tightened my grip as if to keep her from slipping away. Her body leaned in, hesitant, trembling, but undeniable. The fear didn't fade, but it pulsed right alongside the hunger between us. For the first time, she didn't look away. "We can't go back now," she whispered. And then, deliberately, she stepped into me, her body flush against mine, every barrier gone. The choice had already been made. The kitchen felt smaller than ever, walls pressing in, air thick with everything we'd held back. Her body was flush against mine now, her breath rising and falling fast against my chest. Every second stretched until it felt unbearable. "You should let me go," she whispered, but her hand stayed on me, clutching at my shirt like she didn't believe her own words. "Do you want me to?" I asked. Her silence said more than any answer. She lifted her eyes, wide, unguarded, her pupils blown wide in the dim light. I reached up slowly, brushing her hair from her face. My fingertips lingered at her temple, then trailed down the line of her cheek. She shivered under the touch, her lips parting, breath unsteady. "This will ruin everything," she breathed. "Or save it," I murmured. Her laugh broke halfway out, tangled with a sob she tried to swallow. "You're too young to understand." "Then teach me," I said, my voice low, steady. Her body trembled, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she tilted her head, pressing her forehead against mine. The heat of her skin, the closeness of her lips, made my pulse stutter. "Say it's wrong," I whispered, daring her. She closed her eyes, and for a long, suspended moment, I thought she might. But when she opened them again, her resolve had cracked. "It doesn't feel wrong," she admitted, voice breaking, fragile but honest. And just like that, the last line between us dissolved. I leaned in, and her lips met mine, soft at first, tentative, like either of us believed we'd crossed this point. But the second her hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer, the kiss deepened, raw and desperate. Years of restraint unraveled in that instant. She kissed me like she hated herself for it, like she dreamed of it in silence for too long. I held her tighter, every nerve alive, terrified to let her go. When we finally broke apart, breathless, her hands stayed tangled in my hair, her forehead pressed against mine. "This doesn't make sense," she whispered. "Maybe it doesn't have to," I said. Her laugh was shaky, wet at the edges, but real this time. She pulled back just enough to look at me fully, her eyes glistening. "You don't know what you've done," she said. "Neither do you," I answered, softer, almost a smile. We stood there, both of us trembling, knowing the world outside that kitchen hadn't changed. People would still talk, the years between us still mattered, consequences still loomed. But inside this fragile, stolen moment, none of it could touch us. For the first time, there were no half-finished sentences, no pauses heavy with restraint. Just clarity. We wanted each other. And finally, we both stopped pretending otherwise. We didn't move at first. Our breaths mingled, fast and uneven, as if the world had narrowed down to this sliver of space between us. She still held on to me, fingers clutching the fabric of my shirt like letting go might undo what had just happened. Finally, she pulled back, not far, just enough to look at me. Her eyes searched mine, full of questions she didn't know how to ask. "This shouldn't," she began, but her voice trailed off. The sentence never finished, because for once she didn't want it to. I reached for her hand. Slowly. Giving her every chance to slip away. But she didn't. Her fingers slid into mine, warm, tentative, and then tightened as if something in her finally gave up the fight. "I'd been alone for a long time," she said, voice soft, fragile in a way I hadn't heard from her before. "And I thought I made peace with it. I thought wanting more was something I wasn't allowed anymore." I squeezed her hand gently. "Maybe we both stopped ourselves from wanting the wrong things. Until now." Her lips curved into the faintest smile, one that didn't hide behind sarcasm or hesitation. Just real. Small but real. The clock ticked in the background, steady and ordinary, a sharp contrast to the storm still spinning inside me. Yet for the first time, the silence between us wasn't heavy. It was calm. Settled. She leaned closer, resting her head against my shoulder. The weight of her there felt grounding, like an anchor and a promise all at once. My hand slipped around her back, holding her without pressure, without demand. Just there. For a long while, we didn't speak. We didn't need to. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint wind tapping against the window, it all filled the space, ordinary sounds in a moment that felt anything but ordinary. When she finally did speak, her voice was muffled against me. "People will still talk. Let them," I said simply. Her laugh came soft, shaky, but lighter than before. She tilted her head, pressing her forehead against mine again, the gesture tender and intimate. "You're going to make my life very complicated." "Good," I whispered. She kissed me once more, not hurried this time, not desperate. Just slow, lingering, full of something that had been waiting too long. When we pulled back, her eyes softened, her fingers still twined with mine as if she'd forgotten how to let go. And maybe she had. Because neither of us wanted to. We sat there in the dim kitchen light, tangled in quiet understanding, the fight gone but the fire still warm. No more half-finished words, no more lines we pretended not to cross. We had chosen. Together.